There's no way that this truck can be a comfortable family car. Poor interiors with average plastic quality and rough edges, a 2.6-liter diesel engine which makes just 90 horsepower. Heck, even hatchbacks today put out better figures than that. No electronic dials, no automatic transmission, no petrol option, and the biggest miss, no sunroof. The year is 2021, and this Gurkha has no business to be on sale in today's market, which is addicted to tech heavy and feature rich cars. And yet, it exists. And surprisingly, I'm very happy it does. My Force Gurkha BS6 is the first and the only one yet in the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. And this is our story. Why and how on earth did I manage to get a Gurkha across the ocean? Shouldn't have I just picked the Mahindra Thar instead? Well, listen to the full story and you will get all the answers. Today's video, well, it's not a video, it's a podcast of sorts. So if you're busy, just plug in your headphones and listen on. If you're watching it, then great. You will see the visuals unfold. Let's start with a question. Jack of all trades or master of one? As a car market, we are all guilty of demanding car manufacturers to roll out jack of all trade cars. We want the cars that we buy to do everything every time. And that has pushed the market into a hodgepodge do it all portfolio. We want everything feature rich, tech heavy, mileage friendly, spacious car that the market has exploded with compact SUV options that try to solve all problems to a point where today you cannot get a decent hatch or a sedan off the shelf. The market is flooded with jack of all trade cars. Well, the market wants what it wants, and there's nothing wrong with that. I am myself guilty of this one car do all syndrome, and I have a separate video on that. Please do check it out later, clicking the link here if you're interested. But there are a few buyers, very few, who want purpose built vehicles which do one thing but do that one thing very well. Most car makers are not listening to this tiny section, and that's where Force Motors comes in. The Gurkha is Force's answer to this tiny community. Ever since the launch of the first Gurkha, Force has shunned this image of jack of all trades and continued to give us a master of one. If names could sell cars, this would have set sales charts on fire. Arguably, the most aptly named vehicle in India, which manages to compress so much meaning of its purpose into 6 letters. In a sea of pretend SUVs, the Gurkha stands true to its honesty of purpose. It doesn't pretend to be something else. It simply understands and truly justifies its sole reason of existence. In its matured simplicity lies its ultimate sophistication. This vehicle is so elegantly simple and built on straightforward mechanicals, you could pull it apart and put it together in the middle of nowhere. There are no fancy electronics or sensors that can go kaput, and that for me is a big advantage in a purpose built off roader. Of course, it is not without its disadvantages. This simplicity has been extended far too much, especially into the very basic interiors, and I find many rough edges, bad quality control, and things that could have been done better, even with the mechanicals. Let's not even talk about that silly tax plate. I put a full video on that. But for all its demerits, we still need to appreciate Force Motors for keeping the Gurkha alive despite low sales figures through each generation. Unlike other vehicles, this was not built to rake in volumes or to give some false sense of perceived quality. This vehicle was built to be something more than the sum of its parts. This was born out of passion and transcends well beyond market dynamics and sales figures. For niche vehicles like the Gurkha, discussing things like pricing is tricky business. They are worth whatever the buyer is willing to pay for them. How then do we measure the intangible? How much of comfort and quality is to be demanded from a hardcore off-road truck? Can you afford to choose a off-roader and still have a decent cabin? These questions have always remained unanswered for the lack of options. Then came the new Mahindra Thar. The new Thar with its updated splash-proof interiors which actually look like its time and price. Stonker of an engine, petrol, diesel options, manual, automatic options, hard top, soft top, convertible options, and topping it all with its wrangling looks has finally laid out a plethora of options. And the market has amply rewarded the product with unprecedented bookings for what is supposedly another niche vehicle. Suddenly, we have an off-roader your wife doesn't hate anymore, and probably might end up taking it for a spin herself. The new Thar is therefore a revolution in this category. And it seems that there is a Thar for everyone. But the Gurkha, on the other hand, is only one, and it is not for everyone. I have test driven the Thar with my family. It looks great from the outside. Its interiors look well put together, and the motor pulls well. And in terms of tech, it's way ahead of the Gurkha. But inside, the Thar makes you sit literally between the wheels, and there was visible discomfort for the second row occupants during our test drive. The access into the second row was also too much to ask of my family. I personally was not happy with the ride quality at all, and that was a big deal breaker. No place for luggage, and the noise did seep in when I picked up speed. This Thar is perhaps the most accessible Thar yet and appeals to a lot wider audience. It's a great package, but personally, I wouldn't be able to live with it. It's one of those things where if you don't connect with the car, you immediately know. So, even within the segment, the Thar and the Gurkha buyers are not necessarily cross shopping. If you are convinced with the Thar, then the Gurkha wouldn't push the right buttons for you. If you've gone the way of the Gurkha, the Thar wouldn't tick the same boxes. Price has very less to do here beyond strictly personal finances. I love the Thar. This is definitely not a Thar versus Gurkha debate. I'll put it like this: the Thar is a dexterous Swiss Army knife, while the Gurkha is a brutal sledgehammer. And your choice depends on what you want to do: go camping after work or bring down a wall. In comparison to the Gurkha, the Thar is a very refined product and it is at a matured stage in its iterative product cycle. But the Gurkha has a lot of potential and it still has a long way to go. Take a stock Thar and you're good to go. You're ready. The company has already done all the hard work for you. On the other hand, the platform and the mechanicals of the Gurkha is ripe with potential. It's got all the basics ticked for me. It's purpose-built, abuse-friendly off-roader. It's got 4x4 low range with manual locking diffs. It's got this nice true stadium-style seating, a practical layout with enough luggage space, good ride quality for a ladder frame off-road truck, and especially its short wheelbase. In terms of dimensions, it's the sweet spot of size and footprint. It's all metal body, metal roof, and a load-bearing roof carrier which can help you take it all around. It's bare bones mechanicals, factory fitted snorkel, double manual diff locks, and a solid, overweight chassis, and an underbody that can withstand anything you throw at it. Nobody in Force bothered to do anything like weight saving or some high performance lightweight alloy or anything of that sort. It's all just raw and brute force, literally. It does take a lot of work and tinkering around to live with a Gurkha, but I'm so confident about its potential that if I had to build an Indian vehicle to survive an apocalypse, it would be based on the Gurkha platform. Finally, in one line, I'll just say that I did not choose the Thar for what it is, but I instead chose the Gurkha for what it can become. A lot has been said by many people about the Thar versus Gurkha debate, so I don't want to add to that because a lot of info and opinions are already available out there. But if you guys want me to do a proper tech breakdown of the mechanicals of the Thar versus the Gurkha in my style, then please let me know in the comments below and I'll be happy to do that in a dedicated video. So I decided that the Force Gurkha would replace my Tata Safari because only Safari owners would empathize when I say that the Storm is a very tough car to upgrade from. Car prices today are obscene, and any worthy replacement to my Safari that I can think of today costs twice or thrice as much. The only two cars that I would have traded it for are unfortunately not on sale anymore. And here in the islands, the Gurkha would be in its elements. The islands offer a unique combination of tarmac, trail, sand, and mud, all compressed into tiny bits of land poking out of the sea. We have both sandy beaches and rugged forests within stone's throw distance from each other. And thanks to the geographical separation and Indian Standard Time, sunset happens pretty early out here, so you get a few quiet hours of night driving even before dinner. If you thought that the mountains were the Gurkha's natural habitat, you will be surprised as to what a little bit of island breeze can do to it. Which brings us to a practical problem. While we have a Mahindra Thar showroom in the islands, we do not have a Gurkha showroom. We do have a Force dealership, however, but it services only commercial vehicles. The Force Traveler is obviously a hit with the tourism industry here, and therefore there is an established touch point for the company. I called the dealer and he expressed his regret in not being able to offer the Gurkha here. He patiently explained how the company's product differentiation strategy meant that they had to set up a new facility for selling the Gurkha, and so, at least for the near future, a Gurkha in the island would be a tough ask. He was very positive while speaking to me, and before I sunk into further disappointment of not being able to get a Gurkha here, he said something. He said, if the vehicle can come here, then we'll be able to take care of the rest of it. There'll be no problem. If the vehicle can come here. That one statement changed the course of everything that was to follow. But there was one challenge. The problem is the vehicle has to be moved across 3000 plus kilometers from the Force factory at Pithampur to Port Blair. To put it in perspective, the farthest Force Motors dealership in the mainland is at Imphal, Manipur, if I'm right. And even that would take about 2500 kilometers for delivery by road. This Island Gurkha, if I can pull it off, would then officially be the farthest Gurkha from the factory. Even if I did manage to somehow teleport it here, who would support this unicorn in the island? What about service? What about warranty? Who would be at the other end of my distress call if the vehicle ever breaks down? These questions haunted me, and that is the challenge. And by the way, did I mention the obvious drink in between? There is the small matter of an ocean that needs to be crossed. Now that I had decided to bring the big boy home, I'm not letting anything, not even an ocean, get in the way. The next fine morning, I shot an email to Force Motors about my unique challenge with very less hope of getting any reply from them. So I forgot about it and went ahead with my daily routine as usual. The very same evening, just about 8 hours later, I get a call from an unknown number. And just when I was about to hang up, the gentleman identified himself as the national head of sales for Force Gurkha and wanted to help me find a solution. Before I could realize the momentum of the service, he requested me to take on the Chennai Force dealer on conference call. And guess what? They were not calling me first to find a solution. They had already done the groundwork and were calling me last to just present the solution. They had already nominated the Chennai Gurkha dealership to be the satellite for my particular island case. They had already verified that the Gurkha would have to go in a shipping container and not on an open deck like the vans do. The Chennai dealer had already called up the shipping company and shared pictures and measurements of the Gurkha. They had already inquired about the freight charges with the shipping company that transports their travelers to Chennai to Port Blair to give me a ballpark figure. And they had already spoken to my local Force dealer and worked out the arrangements for the service support for my future Gurkha, including the plan for spares that it may need. Force also assured me that they had discussed my specific case at headquarter level and decided that the Andaman service team of Mr. Shibu would be able to do the first line maintenance and general service, and all spares required specially for my Gurkha would be stocked up at Port Blair before my vehicle reached there. For any special maintenance or specific issues that may come up, they would assign two technicians from the Chennai dealership team who would be on call to help out the Andaman team, especially with transfer case, airbags, and differential locks, which the team at Andaman would not have encountered in their commercial vehicle experience. And if issues still remain unresolved, the technicians would fly down and attend to it. And they have already obtained clearance for the same from HQ and were giving me the specific assurance after that. I know what you guys are thinking. This is all a bit much, right? Exactly my thoughts. But the assurance that they were giving me was far too positive for me to ignore. And I decided to take a leap of faith. They assured me that Force Motors, Force dealer in Chennai, and the Force dealer at Andaman were all in sync and on the same page and will take care of me and my Gurkha. So I rushed in with the booking and the purchase formalities right away. We agreed that I would book and purchase the truck through Chennai dealership and they would be the front end for all documentation. They would do a temporary registration in my name and I would have to get the truck shipped to Andaman at my own expense and arrangements, and then permanent register it here in the islands. All this in remote while I'm sitting on this side of the ocean. I couldn't afford even a quick weekend trip to Chennai because of the very dynamic COVID and quarantine rules in the Port Blair airport at that time. I had to trust the process completely and go remote on this one. That means everything in remote, including documentation and most importantly, pre delivery inspection. When I was contemplating this whole thing under doubt, the Chennai dealer assigned his GM sales as an exclusive single point of contact for all my inspections and requirements thereon. I took the leap of faith and made the booking with the booking amount, and it was time to choose the color. I'm a big Defender nut and love the chorus grey on the old Defender 90, so chose the Gurkha in grey. I spoke to my bank branch in the island and they bounced me off to the Kolkata branch, which supports the island branch, over phone. And after a few phone calls later, the loan was arranged and all the formalities were completed. I was seeing slowly that the universe was pushing the Gorkha closer to me. The car was built the next day, and the Chennai dealer kept me updated with screenshots and pictures of every progress. The car was dispatched from the factory and set off on the first leg of its long overland oversea expedition. A few days later, I got the first pictures of my Gurkha from the showroom. After a remote pre-delivery inspection, the Gurkha was invoiced in my name and I managed to cut in just before the price hike, which came a few days later. I was obviously excited to see its pictures finally, especially in the grey color, which you don't see many examples of on the road. With steel wheels and no armor, the truck was feeling grossly incomplete, so I decided to kit it up. The second challenge with the island is that I wouldn't get any accessories or anything easily here, so I decided to do it everything remotely in Chennai itself before the truck shipped out to me. The first accessory I got the dealer to install was the windshield protector. This is the official accessory by Force itself. This can work out to be very useful for me for narrow trails in the island. So I got this fixed. Here's a fun fact. The most common cause for windshield damage in the islands is because of falling coconuts. I've had that sad experience on my safari, and The replacement windshield takes anywhere between 3 to 4 months to get it shipped from the mainland. So I'm going to go with anything that is going to protect the windshield. The next accessory was the roof rack, which was a no-brainer. It's a neat fix for additional luggage space on a short wheelbase Gurkha. While we're at it, I told them to throw in the rear half ladder as well. I figured it would be a nice place to mount jerry cans or sand ladders later. Speaking of sand ladders, this is one accessory that would find utility here in the islands, as I have seen jeeps bow down to sandy stretches quite often and then scrambling for raft boards to shove under the wheel. I ordered a set of sand ladders to be couriered to the dealership and told them to store it inside the vehicle itself before shipping it so that it reaches me in time. Otherwise, shipping it separately would be more expensive and time consuming. If you'd like to see it in action in the islands, I'll leave a link for the sand ladders video. While the truck was at the dealership, I got them to install a reversing camera as well, because even such simple accessories are very hard to come by in the islands. While all this was happening, I designed two custom made badges. One was a name badge. I have a funny habit of naming all my rides, and my Gurkha is called Django. And the second badge was a Special Vehicles Division badge, because the Gurkha is part of the Special Vehicles Division of Force Motors. Both these badges were made in Bangalore and couriered to me to meet the Gurkha finally in Port Blair. Next is the most important part. I was very particular to get a good set of alloys and tires. For the alloys, I decided to retain the OE supplied alloy wheels, Neo Wheels Killer, and did not wish to play around with wheel changes just yet. And I did not want to upsize beyond 16 inches and compromise on ride quality. So I bought the alloys from the dealer itself and got it fixed. The tires came next, and that was the most difficult accessory for me to source. I was looking for decent on-road manners but wanted superior grip and traction with off-road bias, especially in mud and slush. So I decided to go for mud terrain tires instead of all-terrain tires. Because of the rubber import ban in India, it is very hard to find good tires, especially off-road tires. I was looking for 245 75 16, which is an upsize from the OEM tire size, but will still fit inside the wheel well without much cutting or chopping. In the islands, we have Bridgestone, Apollo, Falcon, Seat, MRF. All small showrooms are there, but like everything else, the tires sell for a very steep premium, and only popular sizes are available in stock. So I wanted to swap the tires while the truck is standing in Chennai itself. I called up several tire dealers all across the country and finally found the Maxis mud terrain tires in the size that I wanted in Kerala with Srihari tires through Instagram. I had a set of 5 tires couriered to Chennai, but it landed up in a VRL godown very close to the dealership. The godown wanted somebody to pick up the tires, the showroom wanted somebody to drop the tires. So, for the want of a bridge between these two, my tires were stuck just 2 kilometers from the showroom. I got an idea and downloaded the Porter app. I just punched in the coordinates of the godown and the showroom and got on call with the driver and requested him to pick up my tires from the godown and drop it off in the showroom. Somehow my powers of persuasion worked and he did the entire thing for me, and soon my tires were with the dealership for fitment on my Gurkha. Now I wanted to also resell the tires which came with my Gurkha. So during my effort of calling all the tire dealers all across the country, I found a reference for a second-hand buyback for tires in Pudupet in Chennai. So I again hired a porter to do this. So he picked up my old tires from the showroom and dropped it off at the Pudupet dealer, who paid me through GPay. I have seen none of these places and I have seen none of these faces, and everything was being done in remote. With all the accessories fitted, the truck was ready for delivery. We had a video PDI, a pre-delivery inspection, where one of the technicians went, lifted the truck up on ramp and went under the truck, and we did a thorough inspection all through video, and then finally the truck was ready for shipping. I had established and arranged remotely with the shipping agent who was on standby at the port, and the dealership agreed to deliver it at the embarkation port. I was particular that no middleman driver comes and handles my Gurkha before even delivery was taken. So the dealer's designated driver will drive it into the container, and once it's shut, I will drive it out at this end myself. Seeing my concern, the GM sales himself accompanied my truck to the port and got it loaded onto the container, and everything was shown to me on video with the accessories and the roof rack especially. The truck's size just about managed to fit into a standard container. The upsized wheels ate up into the headroom also, and so somehow it went snug into the container. So finally my Gurkha was on a ship headed towards me to Port Blair, and 5 days later the vessel called on Port Blair, and I happened to be crossing the channel at the same time. The container was unloaded, and after due clearances, the next day I was ready to take delivery. The container doors opened, and there stood my Gurkha. This was obviously not just another delivery where the car is revealed from beneath bow ties and satin blankets. There were no sweets exchanged, no giant keys given out, no customary photographs. I was seeing my truck for the first time in flesh, with a thin layer of dust lashed down inside a shipping container, that too from the rear. This is perhaps the first delivery where I'm opening the rear door and climbing in, jumping over the seats, and taking the steering wheel, facing a corrugated steel wall in front of me. I cranked the engine alive, and the container vibrated with the 2.6-liter diesel. I turned it to reverse and had very less space to even open the rear view mirrors. Thankfully, I had the rear view camera installed and it found utility right there. My Gurkha finally touched down on the island, and we had finally pulled it off. Since the day of my first expression of interest till today, when I'm actually driving around in my truck, there have been so many people who have been part of this journey, part of this mission to bring the Gurkha to the islands. What is interesting is that I haven't seen any of them, not even in pictures. Even all the update and PDI videos were always pointed towards the truck, and no display picture on WhatsApp either. It was weirdly exciting, slightly scary, and somehow surreal at the same time. But the entire experience has been ultimately rewarding each time I crank the truck. I sign off this video with gratitude to higher divine powers which moved everything in a smooth sweep. Many things could have gone sideways at each step, but I was finally able to pull it off. A big thank you to everyone who played a part in bringing the Island Gurkha to the islands. It's been almost a year, and I have had a good run with my Gurkha. It has lived up to my realistic expectations, and I continue to tinker with it and improve it as I had planned before. It is no way a fill it, shut it, forget it kind of vehicle. It demands a lot of involvement and time with it. There are lots of good bits and few sad bits, but a year gone by, if I had to choose today, I would still choose the Gurkha. And with that, this story comes to an end. That's it, guys. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and ask me anything in the comments about the Gurkha or the islands. Thanks a lot for your time. Bye bye.